My name is Claire Warmby and I work for the Edinburgh Climate Change Institute. I am also joined by Judy Kilgallen from the Improvement Service and George, obviously, from Sustainable Scotland Network. So this is really our kind of first show and tell of kind of where we've got to with the Climate Intelligence Service. And we deliberately kind of chose this audience because for us, you are our kind of, the primary audience that we need to kind of engage and win over in terms of what we plan to do. I would like to say at this point, there is absolutely nothing set in stone yet. So all of this is designed to be a kind of it is a co-design and of both the platform requirements, of the service, of how we deliver this. But this has been our kind of thinking to date and would be really welcome, would welcome questions at the end. We've also got various ways that we want to engage people along the process. So I'm just going to start off by talking about what we think the shape and size of this problem is and why we're struggling to tackle this. So in terms of the shape of the problem, we're kind of dealing with multiple slices of the same cake. So we've got both the Scottish greenhouse gas inventory, which is produced on an annual basis and obviously is what we set our Scottish targets on. We then can divide Scotland's territory into kind of 32 area-wide footprints, but at the moment there isn't really a standardised method for kind of deciding what that footprint is and how we report it. And we've also got the 32 councils who report their own emissions from operations through the public bodies reporting duty. And within this, we've also got multiple corporate footprints, which are from the organisations that run businesses, that the other public bodies in Scotland, and also indeed the individuals. And these footprints kind of exist both within Scotland with kind of trails of bits overseas. But essentially, we are dealing with a cake that we're cutting in lots of slices. And it's really interesting that people have been talking about the issues of double counting because we're kind of, it's all double counting. We're counting this footprint in multiple different ways. And fundamentally, that doesn't matter because all that we're looking for at the area level and the local authority corporate level is management information. So if we get management information, how does it enable us to make different and better decisions? So this is the kind of shape of the problem. So how big is it? Well, this is where it's really easy to kind of see why area-wide emissions have caused us all sorts of bother. And the first is that if you look at the statistics, this is on the left-hand side, we've got the Scottish inventory, basically. So this is the inventory that we have set targets on in Scotland. And on the right-hand side, we've got the local authority greenhouse gas emissions, which is the area-wide footprint. And you can see that more or less, these are equivalent footprints. There is a slight discrepancy about bits of the data set, doesn't matter. Essentially, these are the same set of emissions. And then on the far side, what we've got is the local authority corporate emissions from the public bodies climate duties report. So we've got 1 megaton of emissions that you control, and then 40 megatons of emissions that you have some influence over. And I don't think at any point that when local authorities kind of went from going, right, we've got to deal with our corporate emissions to we've got to deal with the area-wide emissions, I don't think anyone's resources increased by 40 times or the number of staff increased by 40 times. So what we've done is kind of taken on a problem that is vastly bigger and vastly more complex than the problem before, and not really kind of like thought, right, okay, how do we need to, well, we have thought how we need to resource this, but we're not getting those resources. So this is also, if you look at the breakdown of emissions, what we've got here is various problems, and the two key problems that we've got at an area-wide level that we've got levers over are heat and transport. Okay, so we have to kind of find ways to deal with heat and transport, and they are fundamentally very tricky problems. And in terms of who owns this, well, this is a really multi-stakeholder problem. So we've got kind of government, both UK and Scottish government policies and plans. We've got infrastructure programmes. We've got things that are kind of fundamentally a bit outside the local government remit because they don't exist in their system, things like agriculture and national infrastructure. But then we've got lots of local level stuff like heat and buildings and transport. This kind of goes into strategies and plans. This goes into different stakeholders. So we've got individuals within the system. We've got all the domestic private housing, which is all individual kind of like people's decisions. We've got the private sector and we've got the public sector. And this has to create kind of projects that reduce these emissions. And we are looking at, we need 2 million tonnes of reductions per year in terms of, to meet this 2045 target. And I think at the moment, we've probably got, we don't know, is the honest answer. We don't know how much we're getting because we don't have a way of kind of collating what is the action that's going on in ground. What do the projects look like? Are we delivering at the pace and scale that we need to for these targets? Are we even starting where we need to be starting? So in terms of the key problems, it's like area-wide emissions are not just large organizational footprints. They are very, very different because they are so complex and multi-stakeholder. And the control that you have as an organization is very different from the control you have over your corporate footprint. It's much more about influence and levers. There is a complex array of multi-level stakeholders, and engaging those stakeholders and working out what they're doing, which bits of the problem they've got, which bits of the problem of being left behind, is something that we haven't tackled yet. This is a long-term problem, but we need short-term progress. And we think there's currently an action gap in terms of the pace and scale of action that is required. But also, carbon reductions on area-wide footprints take a long time to appear in the data. So we need to know what is the indications that we're actually on the right trajectory. What are the things where we know that's a good project, regardless of whether at the moment it's reaping the rewards that we want it to do. We know that it's on the transition pathway. So the philosophies that we kind of built into this service are, first of all, we need to go into a live action program. Static kind of 5-year plans are not really working for us because they keep getting derailed by all sorts of things like COVID and energy crisis. And PDFs are not functional ways to manage these kind of multi-stakeholder problems. So we want to get into a kind of live action environment in this. And that is something that is being done in about 150 cities around the world. So you're not kind of, it's not the first time that this is being done. Lots of cities are going and regions are going, we need to do the same thing. We want to have consistency between local authorities because the benefits of sharing practice and common solutions outweighs the benefit of doing it individually. And so much this morning, people have been saying it's like that sharing, that ability to say, we do it like this. You know, we've got a common language, we can provide training much better if we have consistency. And fundamentally, climate change is not a data problem. It's a problem of decision making and finances and politics and emotions. We're all terrified, and terror makes people kind of freeze, and we need to design a service with this in mind. If we just try and solve this as a data problem, we won't get what we need. We need to solve it as a kind of like, this is a human problem with a bit of data on the side. And it's taken me a long time as a data scientist to realize that. So impacts of CIS, we thought about, right, what is the change that we want to see in this system? So we want every local authority to have a plan that will deliver these targets at the scale and pace that's required. And we want the plan to be coherent and evidence-based, consistent, collatable at a Scotland level, and forming the basis of decision-making and fundable activity. So it's kind of like, this is the how do we get things done? We want to have an agreement about how to use these data sets coherently and have to faith in them. And where you need additional data methodologies, you need to be supported to use this data. You need a backstop. So if people are asking you awkward questions about, you know, how does waste data work? How do we, you know, why are you doing double counting? Why are you doing it this way? You need a service that can kind of go, we've got this. It's like, well, we give you the methodology and we are the backstop on this. You don't have to kind of spend your time defending your position because we need you to be able to deliver action. So we need to hold that position for you. We want climate impact to be taken into account in all relevant decision making, whether it's good for climate or bad for climate, we still need to see it. And we need to kind of, as well as the climate, we need to build overall sustainability impact into this and to become evidence-based, because this isn't just a problem of climate change, it's actually a problem of all sorts of priorities and problems that we need to solve, you know, together. We can't solve them all individually one by one. And we want to be able to, we need to be able to have a platform where local authorities and partner organisations, both public and private, can see what each other are doing, so we can start having the capability and capacity to go at scale. And by 2030, we need to see significant progress on the the target. So we need to see real reductions in emissions where we have made those decisions. So it's not just that the system is decarbonising around us, it's that we are becoming players and drivers in this system. So in terms of our pillars, and these is totally up for grabs, it's the services to be refined, but this is what we're thinking. We want to procure a platform that is readily available. Other cities and local authority regions are using it, and we want to populate that with area-wide data so you can collate and report action. We want to support local authorities and partners to identify and enter your current and future actions into the platform. And we want to provide training that enables the decision makers to understand what they are seeing, and then what decisions need to be made. And we want to provide a service that supports decision making through access to data, sharing best practice, helping with those tricky questions, and finding the common issues and shared solutions. I'm going to hand over to Judy because she's going to talk people through the kind of a bit more of the sort of nuts and bolts about what we will be doing in year one.
Thanks, Claire. So yeah, so into some nuts and bolts. And so firstly, looking at the funding, governance, and the delivery, which I think really reflects what Claire has been talking about as being a multi-stakeholder problem. So it's going to be jointly funded 50-50 by COSLA and by a Scottish government, and really, hopefully, it's going to be a bit of a sort of demonstration of mechanism for how Scottish and local government can work together, linking back to that Verity House agreement that's been signed. I think that it's really powerful. There's been that recognition that there's lots of people solving problems individually, and there's a need to bring those together and collaborate. I'll come onto this in a bit more in detail, but this is going to be a multi-year project. Again, there's that recognition by the funders and people involved in this so far, and I'm sure everyone on this call would agree that this is not going to be sorted out in a year. It's going to need to be multi-year, and that's been recognised in the various conversations. It is going to be a delivery partnership between Edinburgh Climate Change Institute and the Improvement Service, working alongside obviously all of you. As a sort of the reason again that's come through is given the complexity of this problem that we're trying to solve here, and the different skills and connections. As a sort of rough split, then ECCI, Claire and colleagues is going to lead on some of the knowledge and the technical requirements, with the Improvement Service and SSN supporting the coordination and leading on the preparation and then the delivery of that. The governance, so there are going to be two groups, is how we split it. So the advisory group is going to be similar in many respects to the SSN steering group. So there'll be representatives from the funders, there'll be local authority representatives on that, which we can work out with you of how that would look like and what would be best. And then there will be a user group, which will be very focused on practitioners, such as yourselves and colleagues, helping to shape that development. So we move on to, like I said, the sort of the multi-year aspect to this. And the next slide, please, Claire, when you have a second. So this isn't static, as we've sort of touched on already. It's going to be worked on with you and refined and shaped. And that is a sort of ongoing theme throughout the years. But in year one, it's very much going to be focused on the setup, that collaboration and that input into both the platform and the delivery of the service itself, which I'll come back to in a moment. Looking forward then into year two, then this platform that's been mentioned will be up and running, being used. There'll be appropriate sort of training to support that. We're very awareness has already come through in the conversations of the different decision makers that would need to be involved in using something like this, and the different local structures and regional structures. So it'd be like providing that service with actions feeding in, reporting, and as has sort of been well put across, I think that this is about the decision making, if not sort of what is the point. And in year three, then building on that, it's going to be very much around those partnerships, and we'll come on to this later. But it's very much focused on local authorities in the first instance, but clearly working area-based working will require different partnerships to come through from that. There'll be work on collating the data, the monitoring, and demonstrating the changes that have happened, and really then for that to feed into what is working and what isn't at national level, and the focus again on the action and what policy and support then is needed to do that. So we've gone to the next slide, just look a bit more, at year one. So as you can imagine, and you know, I know that there has been different messages that have filtered through about this through the different things. So certainly in year one, a big priority is setting up the team. So there will be some recruitment that will need to happen for this, which we will keep everybody updated on. to make sure that that governance is in place around the advisory group. And really some work around the identity. So this is, you know, how we explain these connections in with different priorities, which we'll come on to, but make sure that the service is understood by the different stakeholders. To establish the user group and really to deliver these opportunities for co-design and input that we keep talking about, and more detail to follow on that today. Alongside these opportunities and sort of setting up, I guess, the project delivery and the governance, there will be two key bits of work that would come through, sort of more around, and really sort of quite short-term snapshot pieces of research that are going to be looking at current area-wide planning and delivery, the status of that. And alongside and very much connected into it, a bit of an assessment around the skills and capability requirements. And I know that various surveys and sessions have been held on this before, so we're very much looking at what is already out there and how we build on that to then draft what training is needed where with what skills. Clearly, a big part of this project is going to be around the data platform. So in year one, we're going to be looking at producing that specification and then testing that out with all of you. So alongside the linking back into the user group and these opportunities for input, then the specification is going to be part of that, alongside, of course, the training and the broader challenges. And then there will be, of course, sort of the procurement process around that. So that's some of the nuts and bolts. So I'll hand back over to Claire, who's just going to talk about some of the connections to the other strategies and objectives. Thanks.
Sorry, Judy, I was a bit slap happy with my slide poking there. We're obviously kind of quite aware that we're working in rather a crowded environment in terms of, you know, what local authorities have to deliver, where all of these, there's a lot of competing requirements, lots of strategies that have to be implemented. We are really aware of that, and I know everybody says this, but we don't want to become another problem for you to solve. We want to become a solution to some of these problems, because we think that the CIS helps you deliver some of these other things. I wanted to have a beautiful diagram explaining exactly how they all link together, and I was struggling to do it, which means if we're struggling to do that, then you're probably struggling to explain that as well. So part of the remit of CIS is going to be trying to really kind of curate that landscape for you a bit and explain how these things interlink. But we've obviously got Scottish level kind of, you know, the targets and the plan and the adaptation programme. We've got area-wide things. So we've got organisation, you know, some local authorities have set area-based net zero targets. We will have the Climate Intelligence Service, and then we've also already got things like local heat and energy efficiency strategies. CIS won't be a replacement for those. It will be a kind of a way to kind of go, right, this is in a detail, a place-based strategy that enables us to think about heat and energy efficiency. How does that look when we kind of put some of those actions and projects into an overall system? Does this take us in the direction that we need to go to? I think that's particularly important with LHEs, because we're talking about changing from a kind of direct emissions from heating to no direct emissions from heating, but the electricity system will take a while to decarbonise alongside that. We've obviously got also these corporate footprints. So someone mentioned, I think, that it would be good if CIS could have a platform for also doing the public bodies climate change duties reporting. We have considered this and thought about whether that's possible, but there aren't very many platforms at the moment that we are aware of that do both the corporate side and the city-wide side. However, we would hope that, for example, the wider reporting, so the bit of the reporting that is recommended, should be dealt with in the Climate Intelligence Service. There shouldn't be a need to kind of collate those actions of what you're doing on an area-wide basis, because that will already be held in your Climate Intelligence Service platform. The other thing is that I mentioned this before, is that this isn't dealing just with climate change and dealing just with carbon emissions. It's what we need to be doing is building trajectories and actions that deal with all of the other problems we've got, so that climate change essentially becomes a solution space for all the other things that you have to deal with. So things like, you know, creating decent work and economic growth, dealing with good health and well-being, affordable and clean energy. We need to be able to evidence the co-benefits that you are getting from the actions to deal with climate change, that you're getting a whole load of co-benefits alongside them, because that's what's going to help your decision makers, I think, make different decisions from what we make at the moment. So this will at some point be a beautiful diagram, but haven't got there yet. The next steps for collaboration before we just have a kind of question and answer. We have got a user group sign up and initial workshops, and we will also be answering any questions and comments that people have got, and also building that into a frequently asked questions bank. We have 3 workshop dates at the moment that are kind of like plumbed into the system. If you would like to join the user group, attend any of these workshops, or if you've got any questions at the moment, Lucky Judy is the receiver of all these comments. If you could just express in your email that you're happy to be contacted about the Climate Improvement Service if you sign up for the user group or the workshops, that would be really useful for us, because that means that we can start to build up a list of people that we can kind of send regular updates to. During this kind of like these workshops, we'll be doing things around both the kind of requirements design for the platform, but also the service design, including things like talking about how do you want us to communicate and on what frequency and to whom about this to make this easy for you, because we don't want you to get kind of caught in a pincer in your organization of people kind of going, right, what is this all about? So we are really happy to kind of like talk to anyone at this stage and kind of talk through what we're thinking.